Hi, welcome everyone. This is Professor David Stuckler. I'm just going to check the stream to make sure it's syncing properly before we get started. So bear with me 2 seconds here, and I will be right back with you. Just going to make sure everything is syncing the way that it should. And it looks like we are live. Welcome, everyone. I'm tremendously excited. We are starting our systematic review challenge. This is our kickoff. It's our launch. And I know all of you are here, are up for the challenge, and are going to rise to it. We've got a whole lot of new members. I'm tremendously excited to welcome. Thanks to all of you coming in from the PhD support group. I know you're coming in for the first time. Special welcome to you. I want to help you get set up and make the most out of the group. And just by way of background, for those of you who don't know me, I am Professor David Stuckler, and I remember when I was sitting in your shoes as an aspiring grad PhD student. I started off from a small town in Texas in the United States. My parents hadn't gone to grad school as a first generation grad, and I hit a lot of roadblocks and stumbling blocks along the way. I remember I dropped out one term. I was very close to flunking out because I couldn't find my topic and I wasn't getting any support from my supervisors. Fast forward, I finished my PhD, later became an assistant professor on the tenure track at Harvard, became a full professor at Oxford when I was 30. And, now I've set up this group to give back, to give you the kind of support that I wish I would have had when I was in a really dark place, felt like I was stumbling in a dark cave and didn't know what to do as a graduate student. And so I really have created this to be an open access, living, breathing community to give you the support that I've shared with my grad students in my teaching at Harvard, Oxford, in Cambridge, and now University of Bocconi in Milan, where I'm a professor, to make that open access for everybody and not just the dark corners of the ivory tower. So I want to open up these secrets and share them with you. And that's what we're really going to do. We're going to go deep in the systematic review challenge and take you from start to finish to publishing a first paper. So I want to, share that if those of you have been struggling with your writing, some of you have been struggling with getting support from your supervisor. Some of you have been struggling with staying focused and motivated, and going through the systematic review challenge. We're going to cover all of those things. So if you've had any of those challenges, this course is going to be for you. This course is also going to be especially for people in public health and medicine, where systematic reviews are kind of the main way to summarize evidence and create guidelines, but they're also going to be for people in the social sciences and businesses, because as I'm going to talk about, these systematic reviews are really a rapid, evidence-based way to synthesize all the knowledge on an available topic. It's also going to be for those people who need to define a research proposal or are just looking to get some experience with research. It ingrains some really good habits of how to do good research that carries over. The students in our FastTrack program who I work with on quantitative studies, they often develop the good habits doing a systematic review that they later carry on to the rest of their work, whether it's quantitative or qualitative or something else. It gives you the detail orientation and the level of rigor and excellence that you need. So really, this systematic review, as I've talked about, is going to be a starting point for people doing research for the first time. And even if you've done one before, I'm going to share you some tips and tricks that's going to make things so much easier. You're going to wonder why you hadn't taken this course before, because it's going to save you so much time. I want to share, though, for those of you joining the group for the first time, just where to find the resources. I know some of you are watching on YouTube and LinkedIn. Just want to share, in our group here, FastTrack Grad, you'll see if you go straight to the guides section. In the guides, you're going to find over 30 hours of masterclasses around the 4 pillars of things you need to do as a grad to really thrive, around getting your mindset right, combating imposters, around staying productive, being focused. And you'll see our last systematic review challenge here. If some of you guys want to fly ahead, although I don't recommend that I'm going to come, you can do here. And our students had great results. We had, I'm thinking Mohammed, never done a systematic review before. Within 2 months, he had his first systematic review sent to an international journal. I can't guarantee you how fast the peer review timeline is going to take, but we can control how fast you develop a good manuscript. So we had several students really fly, get the reviews done very fast, and do take advantage of the 100% resources in this group that I've made available for you. So with that, I'm going to roll up our sleeves, dive in. Do drop any comments in the chat. Really nice to have everybody join. I'm just going to send a welcome here, and I will be checking messages on the chat. You have to give permission to Facebook to share your data with the studio if you want your names to appear. Otherwise, I'm just going to see Facebook user. I'll give you an example of that here. We see hello everyone, and I believe, let me see who that's coming from. Turn the sound off so we don't get an infinite loop there. Yeah, that's coming from Fatima. Nice to hear you. So you have to give Restream permission to share. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So systematic review. Some of you said you've done it before, but I'm going to assume that you have no knowledge, that you're all starting from scratch so that nobody gets left behind. So some areas might feel like, oh, well, I've heard that before. That's okay. It might be a revision for some of you, but I want to give you some extra clarity going forward and just make sure you don't have any gaps in your background. So I'm going to cover kind of an overview of what these systematic reviews are and what you're going to get from them. Then we're going to really spend a lot of time on how to find a winning topic. This is really important. Some people never get any training on how to find a topic at all, and they stumble around like me in a dark cave trying to figure out what a good topic is and not knowing if the topic's good or not, and sometimes relying on supervisors who may be good, bad, or not. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to tell you about the Pico method to kind of help you validate your topic's good, and I'm going to give you a forecasting method to help you get more objective evidence that your topic's on the right track. I think it really helps students to know that they're doing the right thing and making progress. So going to definitely make sure you get that. I'm also going to then show you how to start piloting your review, and that's going to be a good point. That's going to be a good point for us to kind of break and stop before going on to the next stage in week 2, which we're going to dive into next Friday. Okay, so systematic review. What is it and why? And some of you might have heard, okay, I got to do a literature review, or oh, I need to do a scoping review, or you've heard all sorts of different types of reviews. Let me clarify the landscape so you know where a systematic review is positioned. So what sets apart a systematic review from any other kind of review is that it is reproducible. And reproducibility is really what sets us apart as scientists. Reproducibility is incredibly important. And what that means is that enables, so I'm looking in the chat here, Daniel to do a review on his topic, which I know is has to do with ESG. And Daniel, I'm forgetting the acronym for your topic now. Another reason not to use acronyms, but Daniel can do his review, and then Basant can look at Daniel's review, follow the exact steps Daniel did, and get the same data, follow the analysis Daniel did, and come to the same conclusions as Daniel. And that's what's so different from any other review. And that's going to change the way you approach the review, set the boundaries to make it manageable. The way you operationalize it is going to be fundamentally different. What most people do when they're asked to do a literature review, maybe what you've done before in the past, is you might go to Google Scholar, start looking up some words, get some articles, read them, search for some more articles. And the problem is that those approaches to reviews are reproducible. And that's because we live in filter bubbles. So if I search something in Google Scholar with a set of words and Basant searches it or Carol searches it, you're going to get different things coming back at you from Google Scholar. And that can be good. It can optimize, and Google has optimized this algorithm to help you find the right information you want fast, but it's not reproducible. Daniel can't take it, give it to Basant, and Basant gets the same number of articles, the exact same set of articles, so that Basant can check Daniel's assumptions and make sure Daniel's not biased because he has an axe to grind or really believes in his topic and wants to prove that it's right for some vested interest or some reason that Daniel has. We're different as scientists, and that's what makes a systematic review different from other reviews. And so that leads us to the first thing, essential thing that you're going to need to have for this review. You're going to need to have access to a database of literature, not just a search engine. And so these major databases are things like Web of Science, ProQuest, PubMed, especially for the medical sciences, for education, EBSCOhost. There's a range of them, and I'm going to help you identify which is the database that's right for you. For most of you to publish, you need at least two. And that's just my experience working with students. The reviewers come back and say, oh, well, you need one more database. And you're like, oh, I got to go do this over again. So, and I don't want you to have to do that. That's why you look to me for my experience to guide you so you don't have to redo work, which is one of the most frustrating things that happens to students. So I want you to identify at least two databases. I'm going to help you with them. But some of you have mentioned, oh, well, I only have Google Scholar. Can I do a systematic literature review? And the answer is no. You can't. Google Scholar is not a reproducible engine, and you're not going to be able to publish it. You might be able to use it as a chapter of your PhD, but you're not going to be able to use it. Sorry to hear that it's glitching, Carol. I don't know if that's just you. If others of you are having some problems with the feed, let me know. I'm seeing decent signal on my side, so can a few others of you, I don't know if that's on my side or on yours, but let me know in the chat if you're having any problems with the connection. If so, I can change my feed. So it's okay from my side. I'm hearing from others, it's okay. Just to say, if you're on Team Replay, I know a lot of you are going to be watching the replay of this session. Comment in the chat, replay, let me know, and I'll come back to you, and I make sure to answer all questions. It's really especially important that you keep up. Critty is saying it's glitching. Sounds okay for me. So look, I mean, this is 2 weeks, so it can be on my side, it can be on your side. If some of you are saying the sounds okay, that means the recording is okay, and we will post this later for you to catch it. Sometimes, again, Facebook can be a little slow in transmitting the feed. So let me see. Yeah, I've got a solid network connection. So let me just pause out of here. Let me try this and see if this begins to help. Okay, guys, thanks for letting me know about that on the sound glitching. I'm gonna keep going. I can see your message, Daniel. Yeah, that's coming through. So I'll keep going. If it keeps breaking, let me know. The session's gonna last about an hour each time. We have regular sessions here. Friday, always at 4 o'clock Central European time. Okay, so you're going to need access to database. The other thing you're going to need beyond these databases is you're going to need a reference manager. Many of you have not used a reference manager before. I did a poll of my graduate students in Cambridge recently, and 2 in 3 had never used a reference manager. This is an indispensable tool to do a systematic review. It's going to be how you organize, analyze your data. I don't want you to have big piles of paper on your desk and printouts of literature. I mean, in fact, there's very few cases you're actually going to read a paper start to finish. I see so many students reading a paper start to finish. We have a paper a training on how to read effectively and efficiently. So if you're doing that, reading the paper start to finish, that's 99% of the time not what you want to do, and especially not for the systematic review. So I don't want you printing out papers except for in particular circumstances. Yeah, the reference manager is life-changing, 100%. If you haven't used it before, you are going to wonder why you haven't. So I recommend Zotero because it's open access and it's free. And we have a lot of training on how to use Zotero. And message me and let me know. And we got one saying, let's save the environment. Exactly. Save a tree. No need to print. 100% agree. So get Zotero. If not, I started using EndNote. I use EndNote as well. Thanks for mentioning that. But it's not free. Mendeley, I recommend EndNote and Zotero simply because some students have had some trouble with Mendeley getting exports to sync very well from different databases, especially Web of Science to Mendeley. So Mendeley is also free, but they've had better luck with and success with Zotero overall. Ultimately up to you, but you need a reference manager to do a systematic review. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the steps that are going to be involved and just kind of foreshadow where we're going to go and kind of where I'm driving the car for us. BibTeX can, I see your comment, can also work, but you need something that I'm going to come to can help you organize your literature. So in a systematic review, and you're going to have to bear with some really bad handwriting is bad at any time, but it's especially bad when writing on a computer, right? We're going to have to go through a few steps. Right? We're going to need to really define your topic. And several of you have already popped your topic, and I'd love for you to already start popping your topic in here because I'm going to test it against our tools to make sure your topic is good coming up here. We're going to spend a lot of time on this today because that's incredibly important to get right. So many people just gloss over this step. But I see a lot of problems that come later on down the track that if you don't have a well-defined topic that it has boundaries, you can just explode and you end up with a mass, too many papers, too much to do. We're not going to see you for years. You're not going to get anything done. Your supervisor is not going to want to talk to you because they're like, this is going nowhere. This is a dead end. I don't want to waste my time on this. We need to work to define your topic. And in fact, this is kind of this old cliche of how the rich get richer. There's a reason why students at Ivies and top schools do well. And part of that is because their professors are right at the centers of the debates in their field and help them choose a good topic. Just getting students on the right path to start makes a huge difference to their career trajectory, something that's called the Matthew effect. I've got a whole lecture on that, happy to share you on how this inequality happens in science, but I've developed tools that are going to help you short circuit that to get that same kind of unfair advantage Ivy League students get to define your topic well. So we're going to cover that today. Then we're going to go through really defining your keywords for your search. And this is really important for your review to be reproducible. So we're going to define your keywords. Then we're going to set inclusion and exclusion criteria. So we're going to go search these major databases, and then we're going to have to figure out which articles we keep for later analysis. And thanks to all of you who are putting in your topics. That's really fantastic. Then we are actually going to start analyzing the data. And what you're going to notice that's interesting here is only at this stage are we going to start writing up, right? So here we're in week 1, we're in week 2, week 3, 4, 5. We're only going to write up towards week 5. I see so many students start to write up right away. They're not ready to write up. And sometimes your supervisors may say, oh, well, I want you to write the introduction. It's actually kind of a complete waste of time. They just want to make sure you can do something and you stay on track, try to give you an easy step. But actually, you're going to see we're going to write the introduction last. We're going to write as we go along. And so we're only really going to start writing up here around week 5. And then around week 6, we're going to aim to publish. And this is going to help us hone in on which journal. And along the way, we're going to cover things on how to engage your co-authors, how to keep track and connect with your supervisors. Some of these weeks, 6 weeks, I've timed to over 8 weeks. This is for a lot of you. Some students really skip over this step, but it's really important. Some students really have a lot of tough time defining keywords. We'll talk about that. Some really get stuck on the analysis stage. I think the analysis is one of the most exciting stages. Writing up is really the last 10%. If you have everything to write up, it goes fast, and you're going to see that. Some of my students have been amazed. They've told me, oh, I'm actually dyslexic. I have trouble writing. And then we get to writing up, they're like, wow, I never thought I could write so easily and so fast. It's because they had everything ready. They had a structure, and they were ready to go. So this is the direction that we're going to be going together in this challenge. And one of the biggest mistakes students make is they jump ahead. They say, oh, I'm feeling good. I'm going to take my keywords. I'm going to start analyzing data and write up right away. Don't jump ahead. I know it's tempting. You guys are all here because you're ambitious, you're motivated, you're action takers. But if you jump ahead, by jumping ahead, you're actually going to set yourselves, you're going to push yourselves back because you might have to go backtrack and redo a step if it's not right. So I want to make sure you're feeling really good and that we know that you've mastered this step before going on to the next one, just to save you headache and frustration. And this is actually something that happens more, this racing ahead is something that happens to the best and the brightest students, not the laggards. It's kind of like the turtle wins the race. I've actually seen the turtles beat the rabbits sometimes because the rabbits keep having to bounce back and forth, redoing steps. So make sure you stay along, follow along with us. And even if you're really enthusiastic, make sure you've mastered each step. You build a solid foundation before moving on. And like I said, for some of you, what's going to be great here, this is not only going to help you publish a chapter, but this can be a chapter of your PhD, it can be your master's thesis, and it really feeds really nicely into your research proposal, because this is the best way for you to see the gaps in your field. It's kind of like seeing where the ocean of research is moving, where the tide is going, so that you can be out in front and be a step ahead. And I really have all my PhD students do these systematic reviews, even have my postdocs do them, because it gets them to feel like they're experts, gives them a strong foundation to stand on. So no matter who they're talking to, whatever conference they go to, they feel like they're as good as anybody in the field because they've read everything. They know everything on their topic. And they can craft a better research question because they know what's needed in the literature. And they don't do just derivative things that don't have any impact, because they know right like a laser-like focus where they need to go next in their research. So really excited about this. Okay, guys. So let me clear this whiteboard. I'm going to come back now on your, I want to talk about your topic. And so thanks for sharing your topic. So most of what we do in science, right, is what we're trying to do is we're trying to take a messy universe and we're trying to create order out of it. At its heart, science is taking disorder and creating some order to it. And so often this messy universe is it's very hard to just take one topic. I saw somebody say, okay, I want to do my systematic review on big data. Oh, well, I mean, where are you going to go with that? That's massive. We have to break that down and create some kind of order to that, to be able to kind of make an incision into reality, understand it, and explain it to others. So something like big data is too much, right? We need to take most of science. Most of what you're going to do is you're going to be looking at some relationship between some X and some Y, right? And here's a good one that's just come in. There's a really nice topic that somebody's just kind of pointed out here. Whoops. And I'm trying to get to that point on the screen. Perils of multiple monitors. Somebody just came in and showed a topic here. Here we go. On climate, migration, and health. Okay, so that's an example. That's nice because what does that do? That gives us an X and a Y, right? We're looking at climate, migration, and health. But we want to take a topic like that and make it a little bit clearer, right? So maybe, right, this is quite broad, and this is the balance in getting your topic just right, right? It's kind of like Goldilocks in the soup. It's like, too hot, too cold. We need to get a topic where we have more than 30 articles out there, because why would you be doing a systematic review of all the knowledge if nobody's written on it? That doesn't make any sense. But we also don't want to be in a space where there's thousands of articles, because then if there's thousands of good articles on this topic, it's going to be really hard for you, without breaking it down, narrowing it down, to make some progress. And so at the very, you can fix later on the back end having too many articles, but you can't fix having too few. So we need to make sure there's enough. Now, climate, migration, and health, we need to make sure this is well defined and is syncing with how people are talking about your literature. What I think people are talking about more, say if I were going to convert this to where the discussion is, maybe what's the impact of climate change on, say, mental health or physical health. So what did I do there? I actually did two things. I took health and I narrowed down health, and I took climate migration and actually broadened it to climate change, because I just happen to know in this area that's where more of the discussion is happening. And I'm going to give you some tools to help you do that. And so this starts to be a nice topic, because now we can say, what is the impact of climate change? I'm just going to acronym CC on mental health. And a good topic, you can usually make a sentence. And I like sentences that have a direction, because we don't think, maybe, I suspect climate change is going to be good for mental health. We think it's going to be negative. So what sets us apart as scientists is we're also specific and definite, and we have a direction in our ideas and our hypotheses and what we're thinking, mostly. You could be exploratory. I mean, if you just had something like big data, but you are setting yourself up, if you just go completely exploratory, for a really tough ride. You are just making it harder for yourself. And the reality is 1 in 3 students don't ever finish grad school. And part of that is because they get burnt out, and they've often, it really traces back to the original sin of not having a well-defined topic. So they're stumbling around in a dark cave and they don't see like the way out. They don't see that light that helps guide them out of the tunnel. So you really setting this as right. So I'm seeing several of your topics that are a little bit exploratory, right? So I see one here that says microplastic pollution. Really awesome topic, and I think that's a really nice topic for say, but you got to link it to something. So maybe I'm going to give you this tool now called a Pico tool that's gonna help you define it. But before I do that, I want to step back for a second and talk about the elements that I want all your topics to have. So let me clear the board. So to have a good topic, right? We need to make sure that it's feasible. And this is what I call my convergence method for you guys to hone in on a winning topic. Okay, so your topic needs to be feasible. It means that in the terms of systematic review, you need to be able to do it in a defined amount of time. Right, a randomized controlled trial, not a feasible topic. For most of you, to do a big randomized controlled trial could take decades. It could take longer. So I just want to make sure it's feasible. And for those of you in a master's, that means something you can finish in 6 months. And for a PhD, you need to be able to finish in less than 2 years. The faster you can do it, the better. Take on that decade-long project later. Make sure it's feasible. Make sure you've also got the skills to do it. Systematic review, I know you've got the skills, so I'm not worried about that. But in any topic, make sure you've got the skills. Okay, so feasible. And then the second area you need to harmonize here is we need to make sure there's a debate. And I'm going to show you how to know that there's a debate. So that's why I shifted the topic climate migration to climate change. We need to know there's a debate in your field. The reality is, the average number of citations of papers published last year, right? Citations are a good measure of how much something gets picked up. Can you guys guess what that was? The average number of citations last year across the sciences was 0. I don't want you guys to be average. I don't want you guys to have a big goose egg for how much people are picking up and taking on your research. This is easy to avoid, sometimes just by simple tweaks in your topic, by making sure there is a debate. And that is so important. I've had students who are not as good researchers at Oxford who worked with me, who hit the right topic, hot topic, right time, got to be the top of their field doing a systematic review on it, and they got on the fast track. Where other students, really smart, and they really liked really challenging intellectual topics, but they shrunk the space of the debate. They shrunk their audience, and they actually had a harder time. They're smarter, they're brighter, but all because their topic was not as much of a winning topic. They had a much harder ride. It really turned out it had a harder time getting a permanent job as an academic. So we're going to optimize and make sure there's a debate. And I'm going to give you some tests to help you do this. One test is grandma test. I mean, if your grandma can understand your debate, or if you see it in op-eds of newspapers, probably it's a sign that there's some importance there. And the other way is to do citation searches, which I'm going to show you in a second. So we want to optimize that debate. And the last area, not to forget, is you need to be passionate about it. You need to be that annoying person in the room when you go out to a bar or somewhere with your friends. All you want to do is talk about your topic. When I was in grad school, I was that annoying guy. I was doing some work on injection drug use and people living with HIV, and that's all I could talk about. And let me tell you, if you're at a bar with your friends, don't talk about HIV because the conversation is just going to die. But I love my topic. I loved what I was doing. I couldn't wait to get out of bed in the morning. I wanted to talk to everybody about it. I thought it was the most important thing, and it was. I mean, we had really great impact, really changed a lot of people's lives. I'm really proud of what we did, research that makes a difference. You know, I had a topic I was angry about and I thought was unfair. So I want you to have a topic that you have that burning passion, that you love talking about. And you're going to need that because it's going to be hard. This is going to be a lot of hard work. You're going to have ups and downs. That passion is going to really help you weather those rough times that you're going to have. So if you don't have that original passion, you need to really question what you're doing here, why you're doing this, what you want it for, and make sure you've got passion. So I want to make sure you guys find this sweet spot. You guys will know yourself, the passion. Feasible, we're going to work to make sure your topic's well-defined using our Pico method, and we need to make sure there's a debate so you don't get that big goose egg of citations. So how can we do that? Okay, so let me just come back to that example that I was sharing with you. I'm going to go into Google Scholar here on forecasting your impact. So let's say I put climate migration and health, right, which are kind of the keywords on the topic. And you can see there's no term here. We don't even get climate migration coming up here as a term. right? We can see health and migration, but we can already see climate change is kind of the term. Climate change and migration. And actually, nice, we see that there's already a systematic review. Migration, health crisis with climate change. But that's not on health, it's on migration. So climate change is leading to a migration health crisis. Okay, so that's different. There is a term here, climate-related migration. So that's okay. We'll need to optimize this. But most of this, there's climate change-related migration and infectious disease. So this is helpful. See, there's good citations here. And so by searching these citations, we can kind of see, even if you don't know already, where the debate is. Here's one on climate-related migration. So you got to check this. This nice health impacts of climate-related migration. This got nice citations, so that's really nice. So climate migration, and let me pop in here mental health. And where I was saying here, if I put in climate change and mental health, you can suddenly see that, whoa, there's a much bigger debate here. Look at all these citations, 681, 282, 74, global climate change, 54. Just overall, there's a lot more citations in this area. And so you could do a fantastic review on climate-related migration and health, but I can already see that you're going to get a lot more citations, at least 3 to 4 times more citations on average, if you did climate change on mental health. Doesn't mean you have to do that, but I want to make sure you test this out and make sure there are citations on your topic. For example, we've got someone here who's saying they want to look at the impact of coal dust from coal trains to communities on rail corridor. This is so narrow. I don't know if we're going to find anything. So let's say coal dust on coal dust impact on trains. Impact of coal dust. Yeah, so these are not coming from trains. You see, it's so narrow. So coal dust impact on. I've got to put in trains maybe. This isn't a very well. This topic's not blind yet, and you can already see here's a study on the control of coal dust coal trains. So this has gotten 14 citations back in 2006 in Journal of the China Railway. I'm not seeing a huge debate. Here's 10 from train wagon bearer. There's not a whole lot going on here, and that's the problem, right? This paper was published in 2017. It got 1 citation. That says this is the risk. It was published in a Russian journal. I'm not saying it's a bad topic, but I'm just saying you compare this to the climate change, mental health, or even the climate-related migration and infectious disease, and this one's going to struggle to get citations. So when you see that, you might want to try to find a way to connect this to a wider debate that's going to do more. But I can see from the papers that have gotten more citations here, it looks like that these have been, and this is on particulate matter concentration. So it looks like this is more on the air quality. So that's kind of the hint. Coal dust, and maybe we could say something. Let's see if air pollution's coming out more. If it gets us better, here's emissions, air pollution. No, that's not getting more either. So this one we've got to do a lot for a systematic. If you want to do this as a systematic review, they are getting published in pollution journals. So this diesel particulate matter and coal dust from trains. But you've got to really think more about what kind of question you want to answer. So these here seem to be a little bit better. It seems to be air pollution is the bigger debate that's being connected with coal trains. So the other reason you need to do this to forecast your impact is you need to make sure your topic hasn't been done before. I've seen so many students who haven't done this initial legwork. They get so excited about their topic, they get halfway through and they realize, oh shoot, somebody's already done it, and they just wasted months. And this happened to a student of mine at Harvard. And often this is going to happen if you're moving into an area where there's a good debate. There's a bigger risk that somebody's already doing it, or you're going to get scooped. Especially my students on COVID. I had students doing mental health on COVID, and there's already tons of systematic reviews. COVID, mental health, systematic review. And, right, there's a big debate, hot area, getting tons of citations. Look at this, 1,401 for a systematic review of COVID and mental health. That means you really need to go fast, right? The hotter your debate, the more you really need to be on it and make sure you've occupied a good space. International trade, climate change is also a really nice one. And acupuncture and pregnancy outcomes. I really like this one as well. Now that's a really nicely defined one. I think that I just want to kind of use our forecasting method to see. I think this is going to be good. Pregnancy outcomes. You might want to define pregnancy outcomes a little bit better, but let's see. Okay, no, this is nice. So here's already though a systematic review in BMC on this topic. So this has already gone far. It got some nice citations. Was more specific of pregnancy outcomes of in vitro fertilization. So I think you want more safety of acupuncture. This is getting nice citations of recurrent implant failures. So it seems like there's a lot of so I'm seeing a lot of acupuncture trying to improve fertility here. Let's go and look at this and just say, instead of pregnancy outcomes, acupuncture, maybe you could look at other pregnancy outcomes that could be important, but maybe haven't been looked at. That could be around birth weight, that could be around maternal mortality. But it seems like what I'm seeing more on the debate here by just scoping it out, not knowing anything about this topic, is I'm seeing a whole lot on subfertility, infertility treatments in this space. So definitely you want to have a think about that and try to define outcomes. So, for example, in pregnancy outcomes, I know eclampsia is one. I don't know if this is an area, but I'm just looking as an example. And what you can maybe do is connect adjacent debates. It doesn't look like there's really been much study here to see if acupuncture works for eclampsia, so there's not going to be anything to review there. You might have to look around to see, and maybe there's a pregnancy outcome that you're interested in that hasn't been looked at before. This looks like induction of labor. I'm not an expert here. Okay, so there that did look at preeclampsia in Chinese women, but it looks like that field is still very young, looking for the benefits of acupuncture, and most of it is more developed for fertility. If somebody asked a question here, if there was already a systematic review, is there scope to do one again with data up to 2018? Really depends. If you think that has moved on in that time, 100%. We actually did a review, one of our students, the last systematic review challenge on COVID and air pollution. And early on, all right, there weren't many studies on air pollution. The field grew so rapidly, there was definitely scope to do another one in just a short period of time. So you really need to take stock, because you need to justify in your introduction later on, these existing reviews have been done, but this is what they haven't done, and this is why I'm doing a systematic review. You need to make sure that you're adding value to the debate and the conversation. So guys, I hope this helps you by taking a few of your examples here to identify the debate. Help seeking in men with anxiety. So this is another good one, but remember, we need to see if we can connect it. What kind of help seeking are we thinking about? So if we just say help seeking men with anxiety, and I can't spell anxiety, obviously, but thank you, Leo, correct. See, it's already saying help seeking behavior, anxiety, and depression. And here we go. This looks like another review. Here's another systematic review. So you can see, that's a fantastic topic. I think a lot of you can already tell using our grandma test. Like, a lot of you can already see, do you get a reaction to this topic? I get a reaction to this topic. Well, maybe that's because I'm a man, but this is a topic that you can tell could be relevant to a lot of people. Like the climate change and health one, you can tell that's a topic that's going to be relevant to a lot of people. The coal dust one, we've got to broaden it a bit. Maybe you have to broaden it to say, okay, how trains are polluting. And maybe you want to look at how different kinds of trains, maybe you want to shift from coal trains to different types of trains. And maybe you want to compare and show that certain kinds of trains would be better for the environment. And you really want to open something that you're having a broad conversation that's relevant to a lot of people, because you're going to establish yourself as a public intellectual in this area, as a leading expert. You want people to care about your topic, or you're just setting yourself up for a difficult path. If you want to look at mating patterns of turtles in the Galapagos, that's okay. It's just going to be relevant to a very limited number of people. It's going to be harder to craft the kind of career you want, maybe get the kind of pay you want, salary, and get the job options you want. But if you love it and passion's that good, that might off-compensate. But you need to know on those dimensions of feasibility, debate, and passion, you are sacrificing a bit of debate, and you better get compensation from having passion when you make that sacrifice. I just want to make it explicit so that you can know. Okay, so this one here is, you just need to, you can see here, these were done in 2012, 2005. You can reduce the range of your search in Google Scholar. We're just using Google Scholar to we're not using this to do a systematic review, but we're doing it to define our systematic review. Here's one that then started to deconstruct and look at a different population. Might look at different kinds of specific types of mental health problems. There seems to be quite a few that have come recently on college students. You might want to do this help seeking. You can always connect to an adjacent debate if you set this at a time of help seeking and a time of COVID, right? That would definitely, when you connect to a big debate like COVID or climate change, any of those things, you tack your topic onto those areas. You're going to have more of a win. I say climate change and trains, right? Trains. You can already see these are going to get more citations. Impacts of climate change on rail networks. Just saying, if you connect to an adjacent debate, it's an easy, simple way to tap into something bigger. So I'm seeing lots of great topics coming in from you. I want to come and share our Pico method then to help you hone in on yours. And Pico is a really common tool in systematic reviews. And there are different expressions of this Pico, but really what it stands for, the P is for population that you're going to look at. It can also be the problem, or for doctors, it can be the patient, right? So if you're doing social science, it's probably going to be more on the problem. If you're doing medicine, it's probably the patient or the individual. If you're doing more demography or education, it's probably going to be the population. Then the I is for intervention or the exposure, and that's usually going to be that X in your model. Could also be exposure, right? And X to Y. C is going to be your comparison. You don't always have to have this, but I always, in any research, you want to think about, well, what's the alternative, right? We think this is making the world worse or making it better. Well, what's the alternative? So you want to have that comparison and your outcome. And you can see this Pico is really embedding in it this very simple X to Y, because a well-defined topic is not just going to be that big data, or it's going to connect to something, right? Right, in the way we had climate change connecting to health. So the intervention would be climate change, and the outcome would be mental health, right? So we need an outcome. The outcome is your why, what you want to look at. And a well-defined topic will satisfy this Pico. Sometimes people have another thing called time frame. They add a T. And I've actually seen people erroneously define this T. They sometimes also say type of study question, type of analysis, like which type of method. Maybe you only want to, I have a student doing a systematic review that's only looking at causal studies, the studies that can establish causality. Now, this is a tool to help you ensure that your topic's well defined. So we can take all of your topics and thread it through here. So for example, somebody says, here, we've got impact of adult attachment on adaptation of migrants. Okay, of immigrants. So who is our population? Well, immigrants. And I like that you made a sentence out of this. I really want you to have, because we're going to come to your keywords in a minute, and your keywords are going to come from your nouns here. And your verbs are going to connect them. The verbs are going to link them, but the keywords are going to come from the nouns in your sentence. So I want all of you to have a Pico and then make a sentence out of your Pico. So adult attachment on the adaptation of migrants. So you can already see. So where do we, let me use a different color here, right? So here we go. Our intervention is adult attachment. That's exposures, because we think this is our X. This is going to cause something good. Maybe that's going to help immigrants adapt. So that's adaptation. That's going to be the successful outcome. And the population is going to be immigrants. And your comparison is going to be if you don't have attachment, right? That's kind of your alternative. We think that attachment, I think here is a good thing. I want you to have a direction. Intervention, exactly. It's just going to be your X. The effect of what on what. And so I do want to draw a distinction. Sometimes people differentiate. Sometimes people ask me, what's a scoping review? Scoping review is more exploratory and usually follows a different framework. I recommend everybody do a systematic review. They get more respect. They're easier to publish. So many of you who are very exploratory, I recommend you shift over to systematic review. If your supervisors say, I want a scoping review, this is still going to be relevant to you. We're going to follow the same method, but I recommend you do scoping review then as if it were a systematic review. And if you can put systematic review in the title, it's going to be easier to publish. It's going to get more citations. It's going to save you a lot of headache. So, but I know some universities will ask you specifically, I want a scoping review. The methods we're doing are exactly the same. Systematic review is just a little bit more rigorous and a little bit better defined. And I think when you have better defined topics, it just makes your life easier. And it makes it easier at the end of the day to publish and for the reviewers to understand. Let me get rid of that. So that's what I mean by intervention, right? I have a student who's looking at the impact of populism. The impact of they're looking at the impact of whoops, erased too much. They're look at the impact of populism on how governments respond to COVID, right? So that their intervention here is actually populism, whether that's attitudes, voting. They're looking at different ways, and on COVID policies. So they're looking across Brazil. Oh, hang on a second. 2 seconds. I think that I got the first notification that I had some connection issues. Hope I'm back with you. I hope you guys are still with me. I'm just going to check the stream. We have a lot of people on today, so that can sometimes slow things down. Okay. Guys, if you're still with me, give me a life sign out there in the chat. I'm just going to check here. 1 second. That I got the first notification that I had some connection issues. Okay, no. Looks like we're so good. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Right. So populism and COVID policies, and that's what I mean by the intervention. So just looking at your question here, should we have working? Great. Does an intervention exist? Should we have an intervention? Yeah. So I think you want to have think of the intervention as your X and think of the outcome as your Y. If I hope that makes sense to you. And I want all of your topics to have that. Now, this one on adaptation that we're just looking at, I'm a little concerned. I would recommend you go back and just make sure. I just have this feeling that, and a lot of you might as well, right? Imagine you could score your debate, right? Imagine we took all of yours and I say, okay, Courtney, I want you to score Scott's debate on a debate of 1 to 10, right? And that impact of adult attachment on the adaptation of migrants, right? I'm being harsh on you. I'm being fierce, but in a loving way. I mean, I think if we asked others in this group, what would you score that debate? I want you guys to have people say your debate is like at least a 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 in that we need to have this conversation now. This is really important. And if I ask you guys, okay, what debate would you score climate change and infectious diseases? I mean, that's pretty, we're just in the grip of a pandemic. What's the role of climate change and infectious diseases? Yeah, that's pretty important. That's going to be high. I think most of you would score that above a 7 out of 10. I would personally put that as an 8. Pretty important. If I asked you guys to score impact of adult attachment on the adaptation of immigrants, I don't think that would score as high. Right? I would be much lower. So I would want you to maybe think about optimizing that using those methods I just showed you to search for where the debate is and try to connect. And sometimes it's simply just tweaking your language, tweaking your outcomes. Maybe it's integration. But imagine, for example, if we change this, right? A lot of people are concerned that immigrants maybe cause crime. I'm just right. This is I'm not agreeing with that. I'm not anti-immigrant at all. I'm an immigrant myself. So just to get that on the table. But right, that there's a big discussion there. And maybe what you say is if you have better integration, you get lower rates of crime of immigrants. And maybe the psychological intervention of mindfulness or what you mean by adult attachment, I want you to go find that right kind of intervention. And so I want you to find a better, more talked about intervention and a better, more talked about outcome. I really like your population of immigrants. I think that works really well. So, and I also want you to have a direction to your topic that I think it's just easier for people to understand instead of the impact or to where you can say your review, say how a systematic review of, how I really like having questions in the title as well. So, right, you could say, does adult attachment, improve immigrants, and I can't spell, sorry, adaptation. A systematic review of XXX would be a title. I like that because then when there's a research question right in your title, people get immediately what you're asking about, right? And so the same thing for, we've got a Facebook, someone here saying a topic on deficit narrative, right? So academic integrity education, that's going to be an incredibly difficult outcome to study, And I don't know if people will have looked at academic integrity education as an outcome, but an outcome could be student performance, right? So if you have settings where there's a deficit narrative, which I don't think, again, I like you to stay away from jargon because I don't know if people will know what deficit narratives are. I do because I work with a lot of students in education. I want you to avoid jargon where possible, make things simple, because when you make it simple without dumbing down, you make it simple, you increase your impact because your audience can understand. When people don't understand things, they kind of close off. So I want you to open up. And this is an example that in your Pico, if you put that in, your outcome looks like academic integrity education, which is not well defined. And when it's not well defined, we're going to have problems in our next stage going on to our search. So what could be an outcome here? Could be student performance, could be student retention, could be teacher retention, could be something that we care about in the education system as a marker of success or failure. So I really like this topic. I think it's really important. Maybe it could be on impact deficit narrative on principles leadership or something there. So here we go. I'm just taking more of your examples that you're sharing, and I want you to think about how you can set your example in this Pico model. And Daniel, I want to come back to yours as well. Detailed analysis of views of Christianity on end-of-life care. So this is an example of a very exploratory one, right? But you can make this work still by turning it into a question. So you could say, right, and you need to make sure that there's enough research on this topic. And I think there is, but see, this doesn't really have. This is just saying, oh, I think there's a difference. I'm going to go look for a difference. Like this is saying, well, how do Christians and Muslims have different views on end-of-life care? There's not as much of a debate. Now, if you started to say a question of, right, do Muslims, I don't know, do Muslims do better in palliative care or something, right? That's a bigger debate. You're gonna like inflame a world war between the Christians and Muslims by saying that the Muslims have better end of life care. I'm exaggerating, but only just, right? Because you're tapping into a bigger, you're tapping into a little bit more controversy. But by saying one group does better than another. Now, you may strategically not want to do that, and that's okay. But yours, instead of just being so exploratory, I encourage you to shift from exploratory to having your systematic review answer a practical, real-world question that we need evidence on. But you could leave it exploratory and say, how do Christians and Muslims differ in approaches, and I can't write again, to end-of-life care. A systematic review. Right? And you can already see how that's going to go. You have really nice keywords here, end-of-life care, and you're going to look at religious groups, Christian, Muslims. I think you'd have enough papers. It's just exploratory. So it's not really, the problem is, say you do the study and you say, okay, Christians and Muslims are different. Now what? Maybe you want to make an argument about how you need to have cultural sensitivity in medical practices. That would be, but that's not really embedded in the question. The problem is, I also want you to be able to answer that question. Okay, so what? Right? I want you to go further, and I'm really pushing you because that impact is going to make such a difference to your career down the road. And so, guys, what I want you to then do when you make your sentence out of your Pico, right? So let's do another example. I've got a student who's doing one. Well, let me do that air pollution one again. So. Let's say let's just do, if you starting very simply, impact of COVID-19 lockdowns on air pollution, right? Right. You might start like this, and then you could come back and turn it into, did COVID-19 lockdowns reduce air pollution? Right. You got a direction in your hypothesis. You can go through this and begin to pilot and test this topic. Are there at least going to be 30 articles in this space? I want you guys to start your searches and find at least 30 articles. If you don't have 30 articles, you got a problem. And so what are your key terms? Your key terms are going to be the nouns, right? COVID-19 lockdowns on air pollution. And actually, I know this has lots. We actually had to narrow this down in the population, and we put in Europe. We ended up doing in Europe on this because it was too vast. Right, so you can see here we've got the intention was the lockdown, the outcome was the air pollution, right? The comparison was to when there weren't periods of lockdowns and COVID, and the population was Europe. This is a well-defined topic, right? And again, I've got another example here that's very exploratory. That's going to make things a little bit harder, right? If you have music and gender, women in music in 18th century Portugal, right? You can do more by defining it. What is the there's no outcome defined in this particular one. You've got two themes. Now, particularly the humanities tends to be much more exploratory. I think you can still do a systematic review in the humanities, but you need to connect it to some kind of outcome. Say, right, maybe that's how women were excluded from the musical establishment in 18th century Portugal, right? Or say feminism, right? The impact of early feminism on music. But it's really, when you say music and gender, it's a little bit unclear what you're looking at. And when you have that big open scope, you run the risk of getting lost and going in circles. When you can define a Pico on your area, you are keeping things neatly and tightly defined, because later on we're going to say, nope, that's outside the scope. I'm not taking on that in the study. You have to set those boundaries. Here's another example of a study that's good, actually, but it's looking at country origin effects on consumer behavior. Yeah, so I would want to define consumer behavior a little bit better, because I have a feeling this could be quite big. But your country of origin effects, you're already embedding immigrants, and this is kind of looking for a difference. I want you to have a direction to your hypotheses. Is it that you think that immigrants from East Asia or something have more mass consumerism, or they're spending all their money back in remittances? I don't know. This is kind of an important to break down and specify a little bit better. Same thing here. Socio-demographic differences in telehealth utilization following the expansion of services due to COVID-19. This is just looking at, what do you want to say here? That there's just differences in telehealth? I want more. I want that. So what? Okay, so what? What are you going to say? Okay, well, deprived groups use more telehealth. Is that good or bad? Does it mean they were sicker? Or if you see the rich use telehealth more, I don't know what that means, right? And this is important for your impact later on. So not say some of these topics you could do, but you're just making things harder and you're reducing your potential impact. And I want you to get the full payoff for all your hard work that you're going to do. So I hope that makes sense. So I want you to go, that's still kind of exploratory. It's like, how do Muslims and Christians differ? And I want you guys to be able to answer that in your debate. I want there to be a debate. I want you to answer the so what. And I'm going to ask people who are in the studio if they want to jump on to ask questions directly. Let me know and I'll bring you on. We only have limited spots in the studio with this platform that I use, but I hope this is helpful to you. We're coming up on an hour. I'm going to take a few more examples from several of you. But what I want you to do this week is I really want you to start thinking about your topic and make sure that your topic is really as optimized. You may need to come up with several topics and optimize in terms of fashion, feasibility, and debate. And I really want you to then take your topic, your best topic, ask your friends, hey, if you put this on a 1 out of 10, how good is this debate? Ask them. And we might send them several topics. Ask them. I have a tool for my students. FastTrack, we actually have a coaching program where we work closely. I really believe in close one-to-one mentorship. I know a lot of you haven't gotten that support that you need to really thrive. If any of you are potentially interested in working more closely together, do get in touch. We have a really powerful community, and our students have been getting great results working together in a really collaborative environment. I always say we hunt as packs. Right? It's not that ruthless, fierce competition. It's really a space to help each other. It's also a space to brag when I'm really proud of our students and I'm proud of each other when they get wins and do well. So if that's potentially of interest to you, get in touch and we can see if you could be a good fit. Daniel, I promised I was going to come to yours, so I'm going to come right here. So Daniel's got impact of ESG adapted balance scorecard on performance measurements. Now, a lot of you who are outside the field, I mean, this is something I learned when I was at Oxford. When I was at Oxford, there's this very prestigious fellowship called a Junior Research Fellowship. And this is like what all the Oxford students wanted. It was just a sweetheart of a fellowship. I was dreaming last night. I wish I could go back to it, where you basically live in one of these Oxford colleges. You get all your food taken care of, your meals, they give you free housing, and all you get to do is just do research all day, and nobody asks anything from you. They're just these amazing things. But to get your topic is people to buy in, you have this interview. And I remember going to the interview and I had 15, no joke, I walked in, the tables 15 Oxford professors lined up, and I had to explain why my topic was important. And really what was make or break was, did they think that that was a good topic? And people in physics, chemistry, all sorts of different fields. Now the challenge here, Daniel, is that this topic, ESG, adaptive balance scorecard on performance measurement, if we ask people in the group here with us, I don't think they know what that is. So that's not saying that it's not important, but get rid of the acronyms. Not everybody's going to know what ESG is, at least for your title. You can define it later. And this is very specific. ESG, adapted balance scorecard on performance measurements. Right? Performance measurements is really broad for an outcome. The ESG scorecard is probably a tight, well-defined intervention, but maybe you want to say on performance measurement, do you mean stock performance? Do you mean on the company's revenues or some indicator of good management? I think you want to see if this tool, ESG, is helping improve the other company's performance or government's governance in some. It's not really clear, but we need that kind of that clarity. And you want to be able to have, I want you to search and make sure you've got at least 30 studies that have looked at this in depth that could be pulled into your review. So that's not too narrow and not too niche. But then, guys, I really appreciate all of you. Oh, it's from okay. Sorry, so but look, that's great. That's one of the things that's really fantastic, Daniel, that in this group we can really see the synergy. So you've got somebody else in the group who's interested in ESG. So I would encourage the two of you to link up and liaise. I really believe, I often say Watson had a crick, right, in the discovery of DNA. It's really good to have a partner in crime. When I was working early on, I worked closely with Sanjay Basu when we were grad students coming up at Yale and later at Oxford. And I know for a fact I was more productive because of it. And several of our students in the group are co-authoring papers together. And when they have a lull or they're going through a hard time, their colleague steps in and helps pick up the slack and keep up the momentum, keep things moving. So I really encourage you, all of you who have shared, if you see somebody else who shared a topic, right, I encourage you to get in touch. And sometimes I think people have an attitude to keep their ideas, keep their cards close to their chest, because people will steal ideas. This is an economy of ideas. But I really subscribe to the belief of the Nobel Prize winning chemist, Linus Pauling. And he said, to have a great idea, you have to have a lot of ideas. And I've often been, in my career, I've been open and I've shared my ideas. I've brought in co-authors. I've been really generous with them. And that's done extremely well for me. And that's the ethos and attitude that of how I want to work and function in science. That we're all working together for the common good. And you see it in this group. Open access is really an ethos. Transparency is something I really believe in our data. One more topic. I'll take a few more topics. I'm checking in the studio if anybody wants to come in. Not seeing any examples here. I don't know if Courtney, you want to jump in, or Scott. But interventions to reduce self-stigma among people living with HIV and gender-based violence survivors. So that's nice. So this is kind of flipping the question a bit and saying, I want to understand how can we reduce stigma among people with HIV. Now you've got two different populations here, right? If you run this in your Pico model, you've got people living with HIV and survivors of gender-based violence. I think these are kind of strange bedfellows. I can see how you put them together, but I would focus just on people living with HIV or gender-based violence survivors. I think there's gonna be more on people living with HIV, so I would suggest that. And yeah, I think this works. So your exposure here, kind of your research question, flips the Pico a little bit because you already know your outcome, reduce stigma, and you want to understand which interventions can reduce stigma among people living with HIV. I think this is a fantastic topic. My only tweak is to focus on one and not both of those populations. Really good topic, though. I mean, this definitely works. So sometimes I've got another student, he's wanting to understand what interventions can help reduce doctors from feeling burnt out. And so he's going to take stock of all interventions. That's going to be really helpful because it's going to give a menu of options to policymakers, say these are the interventions that can work. Absolutely. No, I have no doubt gender-based violence is increasing during COVID. And so that's really important. Don't doubt that at all. It's just I would focus on either the HIV or the gender-based violence to keep your study tightly defined. Doing both, they just hit that well together. They're more separate studies, in my view. So I would recommend separating them. Not to say don't do both of those. Maybe you do them separately. I think you get separate searches that you're going to optimize for each. Um, so, and maybe you say, as you point out, saying gender-based violence is increasing during COVID, maybe that's another question you want to look at: the impact of COVID on gender-based violence. That would be a really nice topic to document. Another one here: conflict and communicable disease. This is another example. Got to narrow it down. Use the forecasting methods to figure out which communicable diseases and hone in on which type of conflict. It's a little bit too broad. So some of you, like the coal dust example, you might be too narrow, and you can see that in the citations on your topic. You might have to zoom out. Some of you might be too broad, and you need to kind of hone in on, okay, which communicable disease or which type of conflict. Are you talking ethnic conflict, frozen conflict, civil war, trade conflict, and be a little bit clear? Are you talking about kind of refugee zones, post-conflict zones, and hone in on what you want to do? This is really nice. This is another example of a topic that I think is going to be too narrow. Willingness to invest in green technology among working adults in Malaysia. And so that's a challenge. Maybe what you're talking about, green technology, you're talking about buying electric cars or solar panels. This is going to be tricky. You need to make sure studies have been done. You reduce it to Malaysia. I mean, you really need to check there's more than 30 articles and define your Pico, right? So it's not really clear what your intervention is by the Pico here. So try to define your intervention or some exposure. And yeah, I really think you're going to have to zoom out from Malaysia. Now, what this can do is help you identify a gap, but maybe you come back to Malaysia and you do a very focused survey, or you analyze a secondary data set to answer this question, right? We're going to start a little bit, cast a wider net in our systematic review. And then later on, when we do research, and go into quantitative, qualitative methods or something else, we might really narrow down the topic based on what we've defined from systematic review, but you need to go broader. Coming back to the coal train example, what I was suggesting on the coal train is maybe your bigger questions are, right, you said just coal dust. The impact of coal dust, main impact that we saw that had been looked at was particulate matter, was air pollution. So you might have widen your outcome to air pollution or particulate matter, and maybe you widen to transports, right? If you were going to broaden back out and zoom back out, maybe you're looking at alternative modes of transport, different types of trains, the impact of different train technology on air pollution. And maybe that makes an argument that, hey, these coal trains are polluting machines, but if you can switch to an electric train or some other train mechanism, motor, that you could reduce a lot of air pollution. So I would zoom out, but your big question, I think, zooming out, is how transport is creating air pollution. Now, you might want to look at other impacts, but we looked and we saw there were very few citations when you go in this narrow way, and they're published in kind of relatively obscure journals and Russian and Chinese journals. And I want you to be able to have topics that really have bigger reach. Let me come back to the ESG topic, and we're going to call it here in a minute: impact of ESG on impact investment portfolio selection. So still, this is kind of exploratory, and it's not really clear. Is this good? Is this bad? Is ESG helping or hurting? It's just showing ESG does something. It comes back to our Christian. Well, Christians and Muslims are different. Okay, well, we kind of already knew that. And it's kind of explaining a little bit that they're different, but I think this is I still, Daniel, would take this and really work a bit with the outcome here to tap into a bigger debate and something people care about. Maybe impact of ESG on investment portfolios performance. That's going to matter more to investors. Oh, ESG, if you want to adopt ESG because your investment portfolio does better. If you choose your portfolio based on ESG, you get better performance. So I think what you want to say is that's kind of a mechanism. ESG is going to help you pick a winning portfolio, right? So I would link it maybe to performance, but do that forecasting impact method and looking at Google Scholar and just see where that debate is so you really optimize it. Okay. Here's another example that's just way too, I can already think it's going to be a little bit, this is way too narrow, guys. In agriculture. So maybe you want to see if microcarps do better than semi-intensive polyculture systems, I think this is going to be quite narrow. You need to make sure there's at least 30 articles on this topic, or it makes no sense to do a big review. Your field is so young that there's not enough for review. And let me kind of draw this on the board. I think we're going to stop here then. So right, you can imagine a field. The evolution of a field starts. Here's the number of articles. Right, and at the very beginning, there's no articles, and sometimes fields kind of blow up, like this happened during COVID, and then start to taper off. Right here, when there's 10 under 10, you can't really do a systematic review here. Right, in this space below this point, there's just not enough to do a systematic review. There's just a handful of articles. It doesn't make sense to systematically review stuff. And when you get up to here, it is a very well established field. You just have to narrow things down. So here you're going to have to really use inclusion, exclusion, or set your keywords well to make sure you don't have too much, right? So I really do like, what I like is when people do, my ideal scenario is you do systematic review while your field's growing, getting hot, and that systematic review helps you define a topic, branch out to open up a new subtopic or a new sub-theme that you kind of catch a wave of the literature that's going to be growing. I like when people catch this wave of fields that are getting hot and getting bigger. I like that a lot. So anywhere when you're in here can be pretty good. I like, and sometimes even this can be all right. Right, I have somebody doing systematic review of only the most high quality studies of causal studies and RCTs. That can also be okay. But you got to watch out for this space because it's just not going to be enough. And I think this topic about the microcarps as an alternative to Indian major species might be too narrow, but I could be wrong. It's not my area of expertise, so you've got to check it. Guys, thank you to everyone who has shared your topics with us. Again, your homework, what I want you to do for next time, and let me just hang on a second. I'm just going to hide this here. What I want you to do for next time, to keep us on track. Next time, we're going to define our keywords. So what I need you to do, I need you to optimize on your feasibility, passion, and debate. And I want you to score yourself on 1 to 10 how these are. Maybe check with your friends and colleagues, see if they agree. That's our convergence method, really finding that sweet spot. I want you to forecast your impact, just to using Google Scholar and make sure. I want you to know that your topic's going to get citations picked up, that you're in the right space. So I want you to do that exercise, remember, in Google Scholar. And finally, when you've got it, I want you to find your Pico, maybe with a T if you want to use a T, and make a sentence. Because we're going to use that sentence for our next session. Where we're going next is to find keywords. Guys, like I said, this is going to be a lot of hard work. And you need to follow along, because jumping into next week, if you haven't done this, you're not going to get value out of it. Like I said, the essential ingredients, the things that you're going to need to have to do this, you're going to need access to 2 databases, right? This is not going to work with Google Scholar because it's not reproducible, and to do good science, it has to be reproducible, right? Web of Science, PubMed, ProQuest, EBSCOhost, a lot of others. We're going to go next week and use a nearest neighbor match method. I'm going to teach you a lot of tools that we've used to get great success to help you with your keywords. So we're going to use that. It's 2 databases, and that's also nearest neighbor match is going to help us define databases. We're going to come to that next week. And you're going to need a reference manager. So that's the other thing you need to get up and running to really thrive in this course. So yeah, some of your questions here we're going to come to later. I encourage you to form many groups. If you're seeing people in your area, get in touch directly. Use this group as a living, breathing community to connect with each other and take advantage of those synergies. Really excited to continue working together. I'm going to end here, but I'm really confident that if you're willing to work hard, that all of you can do well and thrive. And like any investment, you're investing this time and energy into your systematic review. The more you put in, the more you're going to get out. Just make sure you don't skip too far ahead. Tap into the guide section. Send me a DM if you have any questions. I try to respond within the day. And I will be looking forward to seeing you next week. Come ready. Make sure you get this step right, because everything is going to build from here. So make sure you get this step right. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you same time, same place, Friday, 4 p.m. Central European time. Let us know if you're on Team Replay. Thanks, everybody. Glad you enjoyed the session. It's a lot of fun, and I really love a lot of the topics that you're coming up with. And don't feel bad if I've been a little harsh. I'm just trying to help you. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side next week.